Welcome back to the corner, everyone. I am the DM as always, and today I want to talk about Throne and Liberty. And I wasn't. So I've been playing a lot of Throne and Liberty. I mean, I say a lot. I'm like 20 hours in. Just hit level 40 or something like that. But I was watching a TheLazyPeon video about it, and truth be told, I wasn't going to do anything. I wasn't even going to make a video or anything. I was just going to watch what he had to say, be like, okay, yeah, that's cool, whatever. But there's a point later on in this video where he basically says he wants more pay to win in the game. And I just have to say outright, no. End of story. Pay to win mechanics are bad. Full stop.
I was wrong. I 100% put my hands up and admit that I was wrong about Throne and Liberty. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't really that hyped for this MMO.
No one was. And the reason why no one was because it started as a mobile game, a Korean cash grab mobile game. No one was excited for this game. No one cared.
I genuinely thought there was no chance NCSoft could turn this game from an autoplay mobile piece of shit that we was all collectively memeing on, to a game that I'd actually enjoy. But I was wrong. In the past I've said the combat in this game is clunky. It is clunky. Does it get better at level 50?
No.
Yes, a bit, but it's still clunky.
No, it doesn't.
And the movement at times drives me insane. However, given the improvements the devs have made to the gameplay in such a short space of time, I think they've earned a bit of patience from myself that they'll continue to improve it further. Is the game pay to win? Yes, but all Korean MMOs are pay to win.
This isn't an excuse. This is something that I really hate. This is another thing that I want to talk about real quick, but saying that, oh, all these are pay to win, so it's fine. No, this is not something that's fine. This is something that's bad. And the reason why it's bad is because it incentivizes the developers to hide shit behind the cash shop and force you to pay them to progress.
And the pay-to-win ceiling isn't as high as other pay-to-win MMOs.
It doesn't matter.
So it's
it shouldn't be in there at all.
Free to play. I was so close to quitting this game even after reaching level 50 because I wasn't really feeling the combat. At times I do still think it feels rough, and for the people who get to max level and decide to quit because they're not enjoying the gameplay, I get it. You're 100% valid, and there's a lot of improvement that needs to be made. For me, it wasn't until I really started spamming dungeons, mastering the mechanics, and actually getting used to the pace of gameplay in Throne that something clicked, and I said to myself, ah, I get it now.
I
since
don't
that point,
like
I've been enjoying the game to the
I don't like the dungeons in this game because all of the mechanics are not intuitive. Now, me as someone who has played MMOs for the majority of their life and someone who understands mechanics and can recognize patterns very, very easily at a glance, it wasn't really that difficult, but
point
we'll
where
talk
this
about it more
isn't
in a
something
second.
I'm just going to drop after I've made
This
my
is really
content
cool,
about
though.
it.
It's like
This
seeing all
video
the
will be a
players.
simple format. In the first half, I'll talk about all the things I like about Throne and Liberty so far, and in the second half, I'll talk about all the things I dislike about the game. I'm not going to explain how the game works because I want to keep this video concise and content rich. Also, I'd like to give a big shout out to Canon, not only for his top tier content about Throne and Liberty, but also helping me better understand the game privately in DMs. He's a cool guy and you should definitely subscribe to his channel. But before we jump into the review, do us a favour and support the content by listening to today's sponsor. Marabou Go.
I'm not gonna lie, normally I do just let the ads play in their videos, but this is just a shameless cash grab game, and I honestly can't believe that he's fucking doing a sponsor for them.
Awaits. So let's jump right into it. Throne and Liberty, things I like. We'll start on the topic of visuals. The game has amazing graphics. It's the best Unreal Engine 4 MMO I've ever played, and I think you could argue that it looks just as good or better than Black Desert Online. Some people say the visuals are generic, and I can see what they mean. It definitely looks similar to other Asian MMOs, but I actually like the art style, especially with how vibrant and colourful everything is, from the UI to the world. Everywhere you point the camera, especially in the starting town, can be framed to just look like the most picturesque, beautiful scene I've ever seen in an MMO. Just look at how good this looks. But what makes it look
It
so
does
good?
look good.
For me, it's the
I'll give
scale of
him
the
that.
environmental assets in relation to the size of your character. It's perfect. This combined with the game having an insanely far view distance. This was also something that I really liked about New Worlds, but I think Throne looks even better. I absolutely love the way armor looks in this game. Even early in the game, I thought my character looked so fucking cool with the armor he had equipped. I felt absolutely no need to buy any cash shop cosmetic, and I actually reckon the in-game gear you obtain from quests, mob drops, and bosses looks straight up better. Just
Hang on. So he said he felt no need to buy any of the stuff, stuff in the cash shop. They have one, two. That's it. They have two things in the cash shop for cosmetics. That's it. Okay. And if we go to actually look at like the conversion rate for that, right? So 500 is $10. 1,125 is $20, right? If we look at this, this is 1425 and 1100, right? So 1425, it's the same as every other fucking cash shop. You can't buy it with this one. You have to either buy the next one up, which will leave you with a ton that you can't use, or you have to just forego buying it, right? And the other one, right, is 1100. You can buy it with this one, but then you're going to have 125 left over, which you can't use on anything except like this. And you get one of these, and it's consumable. That he's saying that he doesn't feel any need to when there's literally only two, and the two that are in here are both priced in the most scumbag way imaginable. This is something he's not going to talk about. I've seen his whole video. This is something he will not talk about.
look at my warrior. The shield, the chunkiness of the shoulder pads, the way he holds his greatsword is just so cool. The open world multi-level dungeons in this game are also extremely impressive. The level design, depth and sense of scale in these massive dungeons is unlike anything I've seen in another MMO. It feels like something from an anime. I also love that the game is...
I disagree with him on this point. It doesn't feel like it's from an anime. It just looks really good. That's it.
one massive open world with no loading screens. I like the dynamic weather, seeing...
That's something else that I think all MMOs should be. Just a one dynamic world without a loading screen. Now, I understand why loading screens exist. It helps to reduce performance impacts. But I think that there should be an option to turn on loading screens.
The trees blow in the wind, the dust particles, birds fly up as I run past them, and it's also cool how weather affects the gameplay with various effects. The game has epic music, kind of what you'd expect from a linear...
The music is not epic. It's good, it's nice, but it's not epic. It's nothing special. It's nothing massively impressive. It's got good music, but that's about it.
Game, S-tier character customization, all the sliders you could possibly want.
It does have really good
has
character
an insanely
customization.
good
I do
photo
really
mode.
like that.
All that's missing is the ability to change the time of day, change the weather, and turn off the UI during this mode. And I also liked the cutscenes. A lot of them seemed pretty epic, but the one I liked the most was after the tutorial. The seamless transition of you arriving at the mainland, seeing the title screen and all the players load in. Very memorable. Things I like, gameplay. The game runs extremely well considering the amount of players and openness of the world.
It actually really does.
Sometimes you do need to turn...
I'm going to pause this real quick. It actually, this is something that really did impress me while I'm playing, is the scale and number of players that are always effectively always loaded in and always rendered and everything. With everything that's going on, it's really impressive how well optimized this game is.
The graphics down a bit when there's hundreds of players on screen, but overall I was impressed with the performance.
And honestly, the fact that this game can do it means that any future MMOs need to also be able to do this. Otherwise, they will just be shit by comparison, because they have hundreds and hundreds of players at any one time loaded in, and the game runs really, really well.
Very important considering the pinnacle content of this game is Castle Siege with hundreds of players. The combat, whilst clunky, does feel impactful. The feeling of my sword connecting with the enemy, the VFX and the numbers popping up does feel satisfying. I think the combat in this game has quite a unique feel to it and it's quite grounded. It's not perfect, definitely a lot of things I dislike about it which we'll mention later on, but at least it doesn't feel floaty like some MMOs. That being said, it does take a long time to get used to. Throne has two interesting, unique combat mechanics that I do quite like, the first being collision. As a warrior, I can push enemies into walls to stun them or push them off high ground with my shield rush. I also really like the Q block, although it took me a long time to get used to, getting the timing perfect on this actually feels really nice and keeps you engaged for boss fights. Throne really feels like a true MMO, very early in the game and throughout. It supports a massive number of players, it brings players together with regular events, and you're incentivized to group grind mobs, unlike Black Desert Online where you're penalized.
Something that needs to be kept in mind with this aspect is it's a new game that a lot of people are currently playing because it's a new game, right? The true test will be in a month from now, in 2 months, 6 months from now. How many people are you going to see that are actually players versus bots? That's going to be the true test and really be able to tell you whether or not this game still feels like an MMO or if it just feels like that because it's a new game.
I like that
And
dungeons
that's not
are 6
something he ever
players
talks
instead of
about.
5. I don't know why, I just like it, it feels more social. And I like that bosses can be killed with less than 6 players if everyone does the mechanics perfectly. I haven't seen any boss enrage mechanics yet, and on numerous occasions we've managed to kill bosses with only half the group due to a few people dying.
So this is something that I also agree with. But this to me is, whatever. I hate one-shot mechanics. End of story. No one-shot mechanic feels fair. No one-shot mechanic feels like, oh, this is my fault. One-shot mechanics always feel terrible in every single game ever created. There's a reason why they existed back in the 90s and they don't exist now. It's because back in the 90s, no one understood how video games should work. Now, people understand that just killing someone because, haha, one mechanic was failed is bad and feels terrible. World of Warcraft started really doing this in Legion, and it was fucking terrible. It's why I stopped trying to raid altogether in Legion and pretty much all games ever that have one-shot mechanics. If it has a boss or something that is not required for progression and it has a one-shot mechanic, I will never do that boss. If it is something that is required for progression and it is something that I have absolutely zero control over whatsoever, I will immediately drop that game, no matter what game it is. If it is a one-shot mechanic, which I have minimal control over, or it's designed in such a way that if it is not executed perfectly, it just fucks you entirely, I will drop that game immediately, regardless of what it is. The only time I will not immediately drop a game is if the one-shot mechanic requires several fuck-ups from me personally to have it happen. That's the only time I will not immediately drop it and never play that game.
It takes a long time, but
And it's because
doable.
one-shot mechanics are terrible.
Like content and systems. Even though I haven't gone to many conflict events yet due to not having a guild, I think it's a fair system to have some events be conflict PvP enabled and some peace. The same goes for open world dungeons turning full PvP at night time. It incentivizes players to join guilds and learn to PvP, but it's not so oppressive to the point where a PvE player can't enjoy the game and avoid this type of content.
I disagree with him here. I've done several of these open world conflict things, and every single time I've ever been in one, it's just been a fucking nightmare. So that event that he was just showing, this one. This was the very first one, and there is nothing in the game that tells you when something is in conflict, that means PvP. There's nothing that tells you that. You just have to realize it when you're in the actual conflict. Okay. So when I was doing this one as my very first one, I didn't even notice that I was being killed by other players because of all the VFX and everything else that was going on. I just thought the boss was doing a lot of AoE damage, and that's what was killing me. Until I realized that there's like this really tiny thing that pops up like right around here underneath your character where I'm not looking, right? Because I'm sitting here looking at the boss trying to make sure I see what he's doing. There's a little tiny thing that's like right down here that says a player is attacking you. And it wasn't until I died like 6 or 7 times before I stopped, went there, didn't do anything, and just stared across my entire screen trying to figure out what the fuck was going on. And that's when I realized that I was being attacked by other players. I was like, how the fuck am I being attacked by other players? This entire zone, because I had already completed this zone, I was like 2 zones ahead of this one. The entire time I was in this zone, I was never attacked by another player. And this was going on so much that for 45 minutes, we were attacking this thing, like 50 people. We got it down maybe a quarter of its health, and then it despawned. Because so many players were not attacking it and instead attacking the players. Which means that everyone that was there that was trying to kill this thing spent 45 minutes and got nothing for it.
Point where a PvE player can't enjoy the game and avoid this type of content. Obviously, the endgame siege PvP.
So, yeah, like you have to avoid that, especially as a solo player. You have to avoid that type of content because you're just not going to be able to fucking do anything in it.
And GVG stuff is insanely fun. It's the best pinnacle content in any MMO really, in my opinion. The most fun I ever had in an MMO was my days of being in a hardcore siege guild back in Black Desert Online, so I'm really excited to try this part of Throne. I really enjoyed Throne's solo boss challenge content, Tadal's Tower. Going into it I expected it to be gear gated, but every boss is just pure mechanics, and I cleared the whole thing with potato gear as soon as I hit level 50. I love that daily.
That's not entirely true. It's not just purely mechanics. One thing I've noticed is this game has a really big problem with HP, and HP restoration. So when I first started playing, I was using a dagger and a staff. The staff was just to be able to apply some like burning, and the daggers were my primary damage source. If I was doing one of those towers, or if I was trying to AoE farm, I would lose a lot of health really fast and I would die. The moment I switched to the staff and wand, absolutely no issues. My HP, I get back so much HP from the way the wand works that it's literally impossible for me to die. So, no, I don't agree with this at all. It's not purely mechanics. If it was purely mechanics, I'd be able to do it with just fists. But you can't.
Dailies stack up to 5 days before you're at your caps. You can
I
literally
hate
not
dailies.
play for 4 days, then catch up on everything on day 5, and you're not missing out on efficiency. Unlike most Korean MMOs, Throne doesn't seem like it's too time consuming. Dare I say, I think this might be an MMO that respects your time once you're in the flow of doing the daily stuff.
So this is an important thing to point out. He makes it seem like, oh, this game is great, it respects your time. But then he also says, if you get into the flow of the dailies. That's the only time that it respects your time, is after you've already begun and gotten invested into the dailies. But until you get invested into them, they don't respect your time. Also, dailies are just shit. They're nothing but a grind.
This game's gear enhancement system is one of the least punishing I've ever seen in a Korean MMO. Yes, there's a bit of RNG, but it's really not much. You always get something for using your resources to improve your gear. There's no
So this is also a lie. You don't always get something for the resources you invest in your gear. Right here you can see this, right? So watch this.
You
Bam,
always get something for using your resources to improve your gear.
This used 5 to get 1 level. That means if you could not do all 5, you only have 4 and you get nothing for it. Your gear you don't get any increases to the stats on your gear until it gets the level. So no. You don't always get something for the resources you invest into your gear. You just don't. This is a lie.
Gear. There's no seemingly unreachable ceiling like in BDO. I also think the way you obtain gear is relatively well designed too. For a Korean MMO, I was surprised that I didn't find a whole lot of inconvenience. Usually these games will have wait.
The reason why there's not a lot of inconvenience right now is because it's brand new and they want to get people invested into the game, and I guarantee you a year down the line this cash shop is going to look significantly different and is going to make the game entirely pay to win. I guarantee it.
Limit systems, almost no inventory space, a lot of create problem to sell solution, but there doesn't seem to be too much of that in this game, so far anyway. I think it's cool that the chat has an auto-translator built in, and I also like that the devs are listening to feedback and seem to be fast at improving the game. This game is unrecognisable now compared to what it was a year and a half ago, so hats off to the devs for the changes so far. Next, let's discuss the things I dislike about Throne, once again starting with the visuals. I absolutely hate turning into a dog to run around. My character looks so fucking cool in human form, but I need to transform into a shit animal and go through a weird animation. Bro, just let me fucking sprint, it would be so much better. Delete the animal shit and give us a sprint instead. I really don't feel like the morphs add anything to the game, and for me I'd prefer if they just took the traditional MMO approach of mounts instead. But at the very least, they need to improve the transition from animal form to human form, because it's very janky. The camera zooms in, your character often desyncs on this transition, and it doesn't feel instant and responsive. On top of that, there's no option to enable the animal form only when shift is being held. You need to double tap shift to enable and instantly disable it. So in boss fights you often linger in animal form for a few seconds longer than you'd like, wasting stamina and as a result not having enough stamina for a Q block. It just feels bad. Actually seeing which target you're targeting can be difficult at times. The indicator's just this small orange bracket around an already orange nameplate.
What they need to do with this, Asmongold said that they should make it bigger when you target them. I don't think that would do absolutely anything. What they need to do first is remove this. No one gives a shit about this. Remove this gradient fucking black background on all of them that you're not targeting. Change the fucking nameplates to not be orange, make them red, because red is the universal color of bad. And then the one you do have targeted, have it actually fill in the background and be completely black. That way you know exactly who you are targeting at all times. And look, it looks a lot cleaner because, like, look at this shit. This shit is so fucking terrible to look at. Like, this right here is what it should look like, this gray wolf. And this, it should be just like a black box around the name and health bar. And that's it.
When you're getting ragged by 10 mobs at once, you can't really glance and see your target, so perhaps the nameplate on your targeted enemy could benefit from some customization options. Things I dislike: gameplay. The movement when it comes to flying, grappling and climbing feels awful. Janky animation locks and camera zooms on grappling. The climbing is barely functional. You'll see tons of inclines that you think you can jump over, but you can't. And the transition from flight to human form is not smooth. The thing that makes this even more annoying is that there's so many quests and bosses in this game with jumping puzzles and mechanics that utilize the grapple and flight. So much so that you'd think this game has the movement fluidity of Mirror's Edge. It doesn't. The movement feels really shit sometimes, and it's the biggest
Yeah.
area of improvement that I'd like.
The movement is the primary reason why I've started to stop play. I've begun to pull back on playing this game. Because when I first downloaded it, I played it for like a solid like 8-10 hours. Because I was really enjoying it. But the more I play it, the more like this movement shit gets in the way of just absolutely everything. There are a lot of times like we saw or was it right here where you will go to grapple something and it won't actually send you all the way to where it's supposed to. You'll stop like just short and you'll fall down a cliff or something, and it'll just be like, what the fuck? Or you'll sit here and mash the button for the grapple and it just won't do anything.
So much so, movement feels really shit sometimes, and it's the biggest area of
They
improvement
need
that I'd
to
like
improve
to see. Now, to be fair to the devs, movement used to be even worse. Until recently, there was inertia when changing directions.
If there was inertia when I started playing like this, I'd have immediately stopped, uninstalled, and said this was the worst game in the history of ever.
I actually had a bug where this inertia was re-enabled for my character, and it felt like absolute dog shit to just move around the world. Thankfully, a relog fixed this issue, but definitely for me, one of the game's biggest weaknesses is the feeling of movement.
Inertia in realistic physics should never be added to the game unless it categorically only improves the game. If it does anything other than completely improve the game, do not add it.
As for combat, there's still a lot of clunky combat abilities. The game has improved, but there's still more that needs to be done. Now, when I say clunky, I'm mostly referring to a combination of your abilities and how they tie in with movement. The Warrior's Dash, for example, has a micro animation lock at the start and end of the ability. As a mage, if you begin casting a spell at max range, but the target moves even 1 centimeter out of range, your spell is cancelled without any buffer zone like other MMOs usually have. There's just so many abilities with micro animation locks that root you in place, and even if it's just for half a second, taking away a player's freedom of movement is what makes it feel clunky. I'd happily go more in depth on this in a separate video, but people keep telling me the combat gets less clunky with more gear. I think they're misunderstanding my complaint. I understand that cooldowns get shorter, attack speed gets faster, some skills can instant cast with skill specializations, I get that. But unless there's an item that literally reads, removes the animation lock on X ability, then I've failed to see how progressing further in the game will make it less clunky.
And he's absolutely right here. So if there's a reason why in Final Fantasy XIV there are almost no animation locks on any ability at all. The only animation locks that actually exist, like actual animation locks where you're unable to do anything else, are dash abilities for like the monk and the ninja and whatnot. And like I think 1 or 2 of the dragoon's jump abilities. That's it. Every other ability has absolutely no animation locks whatsoever. And the reason why is because removing your ability to control your character in any way, shape, or form, it feels really, really fucking bad, especially if you're doing it to yourself.
In addition, Throne also has a few AoE abilities that I feel should be usable without a target, which aren't. Piercing.
All abilities should be able to be used without a target. Every single one. And if you have a target, the ability, the mage has this like ice spear that it can throw out. How it works is if you press the ability, the reticle to show you the path comes up. The path is not based on where the actual mouse is located. It's based off of effectively where the camera and mouse are located. So, for instance, if I had the mouse here, right, it would not have the ability go in this direction. It would have the ability go in this direction. Okay? Because the mouse is up here, so that's just how the game works. It's stupid. What it should do is go in this direction directly towards the mouse, but it doesn't. I had a situation where there was a boat directly behind me. I had my mouse right here, and instead of going this way, right? It went directly behind me and up and up, right? So it completely missed the actual fucking target. What it needs to do, especially if you have a target selected and you double press the button, it needs to just immediately go to the thing you have targeted.
Strike being
But
an
it doesn't
example
do
with
that.
Sword and Shield, and Devastating Smash plus Guillotine Blade AoE spec for Greatsword. I think the devs should try to make almost every ability usable without having a target,
Guild Wars 2 has the
similar
best
to how
combat
it
in my
works in
opinion.
Guild Wars 2. Just a small thing, but I dislike how your character will often have their movement interrupted and blocked by the smallest of rocks or inclines sticking out of the floor.
So the reason why they do this, and this isn't an issue in any other MMO because they do it differently. So typically in an MMO, a path like this, it would have just one collision box at the very, very top, like right up here. 14, for example, if you're standing on something and you aim the camera such that you can see under your actual feet, you'll notice that there's like this tiny little gap where you're just basically floating in the air. And that's because of the collision box. And the reason why they do it is so that way you avoid things like this where you have a situation where you are standing here and for whatever reason that is unknown to the player, you can't target something that's standing up here. And it removes that entirely by making it just one flat plane. And that's why it does that here.
Some of the arena maps I find
It's really
annoying that
bad.
they've incorporated the grapple mechanic to their map design, which doesn't feel good. In fact, here's a good example. I fell off the map, I tried
I've
to
had
grapple
this
back
kind of
up,
thing happen a
and
lot.
I'm just
And this is
completely
just
bugged out
fucking
for a solid minute.
awful.
I
It's
can
terrible.
see how this would be fun if the grappling...
So he's kind of spamming through here. I don't have the game up anymore. So right here you can see there's this escape button. Games only have this escape button if they know that there are a chance where your character will just get stuck. And what it does, and here's the thing, it's not even instantaneous. You have to wait like a good minute for this to actually activate. And if you move at all or do anything, it just cancels it.
grappling was actually good, but unfortunately it isn't. The combat block feature can feel a bit scuffed when you're trying to solo AoE farm, all the circles going off at different times, running out of stam,
terrible.
and you can't get any channeled abilities off.
The block should not take stamina, at all. It just shouldn't. Uh,
I think in
it's just bad.
PvE you should have like 2 or 3 seconds where you can't be CC'd after a successful block. I dislike that sprint and block have the same stamina usage, as when you're grouping up mobs to farm, you simply have no stamina left to block once they're all grouped up. It feels bad. Additionally, I dislike that after you've killed all your enemies and should theoretically be out of combat, your travel morph still has its stamina drain as if you're in combat for a solid 10 seconds after it's finished. And playing melee in large-scale encounters, both PvP and PvE, can feel bad sometimes, because you basically need to be on top of your target to hit them. So for events, you might feel like you're just running around with ranged DPS killing everything before you can even reach your target. Perhaps there should be a bit more tolerance in regards to the distance that melee need to be to use their abilities.
This is another reason why I say that they need to make it so that you can use all of your abilities without a target. If your dashes could be used without a target, then a lot of that would be alleviated. But also, like in World of Warcraft, for example, and in Final Fantasy 14, you do not need to be like right up against your target in order to actually hit them or use abilities. You can be a pretty decent distance away. And in some cases, like 14, you want to be max melee distance. And you can still use your abilities. So they need to do both of those, where you can use abilities without a target and you can actually attack things without being directly next to them for melee.
Things I dislike, content
That's the entire reason I don't play
Rerolling weapons
melee.
becomes harder the longer you play. I don't mind how they've designed the skill leveling and mastery systems, but at least sell us the ability to transfer masteries or buy skill conversion books off.
So this is where I stopped and I pulled up OBS because I 100% categorically fucking disagree with this shit. Absolutely fucking not. They should not. You should not be incentivizing them to add more pay to win mechanics. That is the absolute worst possible thing you could possibly ever fucking tell them to do. Because now you, LazyPeon, with your almost 1 million subscribers, have told the developers, yes, we want more pay to win in this game that's already pay to win? No! Categorically no!
Off the cash shop, it wouldn't even be pay to win.
Yes, it would! You are allowing them to buy power. That is the very definition of pay to win.
If people stop enjoying their character, they'll quit. If they have the option to
If people know that they're going to be gated because of pay to win, they're going to quit.
spend money to try a different playstyle without feeling like they've wasted tons of time, then they might stick around.
I absolutely won't. I will, if this game becomes nothing but pay to win and they begin to add, like, oh, now you can buy just skill growth books for cash, and you could buy weapons for cash, and you could buy weapon rerolls with cash, and weapon materials with cash, I'm going to quit instantaneously. Like, no. Adding more pay to win is not going to get more people to join. It's going to make more people quit.
The auction house is extreme.
The entire reason I stopped playing any gacha game ever is because every single one of them, even fucking Genshin Impact, is pay to win.
Extremely laggy. I hope this is just a launch issue, but it's
The auction house is also really fucking bad because no one sells shit for gold. They all sell it for actual cash. This is why Diablo 3 removed this. It's because this is all people were doing. And it made it so that if you weren't paying for the shit with cash, if you weren't spending money, you couldn't fucking progress.
not been very responsive since launch. I dislike the micro FPS freezes you get when you open and close the map, as well as other UI elements. This could use some optimization. Some of the quests during the leveling process were awful. Thankfully, leveling is quick, but from level 30 to 45 it felt like every quest was either a puzzle, a jumping puzzle, or utilized the game's awful climbing mechanics. This entire part of the game...
I stopped doing any of these optional quests entirely. Because a lot of them, if they tell you to go and gather this thing from this location, it's not instant. The resource is not instance based. It's not based on whether or not you have taken it. It's based off whether or not anyone has taken it. And so if someone else takes it, it just despawns and you have to wait for it to respawn. I've stopped doing any of these fucking optional quests entirely.
Game would feel better if they improved the feeling of movement. The new player experience in Throne is not the best in that the game does a poor job of teaching you about its progression systems, traits, dissolving gear, and the procurement of resources, to name a few. There's a lot of pitfalls for new players to mess up their characters, especially for those that don't watch YouTube guides. And finally, the game is pay to win. It's not B.
And you want it to be more pay to win. Let's be clear about that. You told them that they should add things to the cash shop to let them buy power. So I don't agree with this. You can't sit here and say this is a negative when you yourself have said that you want it to be more pay to win.
EDO levels of pay to win, and a free-to-play player could definitely play the game, get geared, and enjoy it.
A free-to-play player can play the game and enjoy Black Desert Online. It's still pay to win and fucking awful. A free-to-play player can play and enjoy Genshin Impact. It's still play to win and awful.
It's not going to be as fast as a pay-to-win player, but it's achievable.
It never is. And that's the entire point of having pay-to-win mechanics. Is to make it feel awful and make you and basically force you to pay money.
Finally, here's a small list of improvements I want for Throne of Liberty. Forgive me if some of these are already in the game on Korea. I don't play KR, so I don't know what's coming soon. Considering that a lot of the in-game armor is just as good or better than cash shop cosmetics, let us
there are 2 cash shop cosmetics. That's it. 2. And they're both scummily priced.
Collect the appearance of armor that we've obtained in the lithograph book, so we can then use that as cosmetics too. I would like more than 3 ability loadouts. 3 is not enough. You have multiple for PvP, PvE, solo, small scale, large...
I've never had this problem whatsoever. All of my AoE abilities, here's the thing, right? Your AoE abilities don't get weaker because you're only using it on one person. Because even in AoE situations, it does the exact same amount of damage. It's just it does it to all of them. Like, absolutely not.
Scale and so on. Remove animation locks on more abilities, overhaul the movement system, we need improvements to the grappling, jumping and vaulting mechanics, as well as smoother transitions in and out of morph.
The grappling, the way they need to do the grappling is when you press it, what it does is it puts its play is it a preset animation where it just sets your character at an XYZ coordinate. And the animation just takes you to those coordinates. That's what they need to do. That's what I thought it was going to do at first, but it obviously doesn't do that. And that's absolutely what it needs to do.
Make it easier to re-roll, sell weapon mastery transfers on the cash shop if you want. The game's already paid.
No, absolutely not. Do not sit here and tell them that they need to put more things on the cash shop and then try to be like, oh, but the cash shop is a negative. No.
Pay to win, so giving people the option to pay to re-roll is completely fine.
No, it's not. No. Saying, oh, it's already pay to win, so this is fine. No, it's not.
Help chat or buddy system to help new players avoid mistakes and common pitfalls. Add the ability to change.
No, what they don't need to sit here and add a help chat or make it so that they need to go to an external source. I've had so many quests, mainline quests, mind you, where I've had to go to an external fucking guide to figure out what the fuck I was supposed to do because the game just doesn't tell you or give you any kind of indication as to what the fuck you're supposed to do. With things like their fucking crafting system and shit, they need to actually have a fucking designated tutorial that tells the player and leads them step by step into exactly how the system works. I should not have to go to an external source to learn how the mechanic works. Having to go to an external source to learn the in-depth intricacies of it is fine. That's fine. Having to go to an external source to figure out how to fucking get this one specific lithograph node in order to make this one specific item that I don't even know if it's going to be good for my fucking class or my skill set, and having to go to an external source for that is bad.
Buddy system to help new players avoid mistakes and common pitfalls. Add the ability to change the time of day, change the weather, and turn off the UI during photo mode. Add a small duration of CC immunity following a successful block. Give us more customization options to help us see which enemy we have targeted. And finally, delete the furry stuff, get rid of it out of the game, and send whoever decided it was a cool idea over to Square Enix to go work on Final Fantasy XIV. Overall, it took me quite a while to
LazyPeon. 14 as fucking mounts, you retard.
to get used to it, but I'm finally enjoying Throne of Liberty, and it definitely seems like a game that will appeal to me in the long term, provided the devs can keep improving it, and they don't ramp up the pay-to-win ceiling to be any higher.
Ain't no way this motherfucker just said that. I have to have misheard him.
Can keep improving it, and they don't ramp up the pay-to-win ceiling to be any higher. Designed the skill leveling and mastery systems, but at least sell us the ability to transfer masteries or buy skill conversion books off the cash shop.
So here he says, at least sell us the ability to buy power off the cash shop, right? So he says that right here at 1441.
Game that will appeal to me in the long term, provided the devs can keep improving it, and they don't ramp up the pay-to-win ceiling to be any higher.
So at 1441, he says, sell us pay to win. And then at 1725, he says, I hope they don't ramp up the pay to win ceiling in the cash shop. No! You don't get to play this fucking double-sided bullshit. You have almost 1 million fucking subscribers. And in the exact same video, you say, I want them to sell us power, and then also say that I want them to not ramp up the pay-to-win ceiling. What? I can't even finish his video. And it has less than a minute left. TheLazyPeon, you're an actual peon. On one hand, you say you want them to sell you more shit in the cash shop and sell you more power. And then on the other hand, you say, I hope they don't sell us more power in the cash shop. That's all for this video. Thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, hit like and subscribe. If you didn't, hit dislike, leave a comment, let me know why you want to support this peon and why you want them to have more pay-to-win mechanics.